Sir, step away from the child. The voice cut through the warm afternoon air like something sudden and sharp, the kind of command that makes people stop walking without even knowing why. Marcus Reed froze beside the ice cream stand, one hand still holding the napkin he had been using to wipe melted strawberry from his daughter's fingers. For a brief second, he thought the officer must be talking to someone else. But then he saw the police cruiser rolling to a slow stop just 20 feet away, the tires crunching lightly over the gravel edge of the parking lot, and the officer inside was looking directly at him. The summer sun hung low above the strip mall, bright enough that the chrome badge on the officer's chest flashed like a signal mirror. Around them, the ordinary sounds of a Saturday afternoon kept moving. A car door slamming somewhere down the row, a shopping cart rattling across pavement, the distant hum of an air conditioner unit fighting the 88-degree heat. Lily Reed didn't notice any of it. She was too busy laughing at the crooked scoop of pink ice cream tilting dangerously on top of her cone. "Dad, it's melting again," she said, holding it up toward Marcus with the casual trust of a child who believes the world is simple and safe. Marcus smiled, reaching for another napkin from the dispenser bolted to the wooden counter. It had been their small tradition every other Saturday. Ice cream after the grocery run. Lily would always pick strawberry, even though half of it usually ended up on her hands before the first bite. But the officer was already stepping out of the cruiser. His door opened with a heavy metallic click that carried farther than it should have. Marcus noticed the way the man's eyes moved first to Lily, then back to Marcus, lingering there a second longer than normal. The officer's partner remained in the passenger seat, watching through the windshield. "Sir," the officer said again, his voice firmer now, "I need you to step away from the little girl." Marcus blinked once, confused, glancing down at Lily as if the explanation might somehow be written on her bright yellow backpack. The backpack still had a cartoon unicorn clipped to the zipper, the same one she insisted brought her luck on spelling tests. "Officer," Marcus replied slowly, keeping his tone, calm the way he had learned to do years ago. "This is my daughter." Lily looked up immediately, nodding with sticky fingers wrapped around the cone. "Yeah, he's my dad." But something in the officer's expression didn't soften. If anything, it tightened, like a door quietly locking. The parking lot began to notice now. A woman pushing a stroller slowed near the curb. Two teenagers sitting on the hood of a dusty pickup truck stopped talking and turned their heads. Marcus felt the shift in the air, that invisible tension that creeps into a place when people realize something unusual is unfolding. The officer's hand rested lightly near the radio on his shoulder, and for the first time Marcus noticed the small red light blinking on the camera mounted to the officer's chest. It blinked steadily, recording everything. Lily tugged gently on Marcus's shirt sleeve. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice suddenly unsure. "Why is the policeman staring at us like that?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He simply looked at the officer, then at the flashing red body cam, and then back at his daughter standing beside him with melted strawberry ice cream dripping onto the pavement. And in that quiet moment, before anyone else spoke again, something about the situation already felt terribly wrong. Marcus kept his hands where they were, one still holding the napkin, the other resting loosely at his side, because years of quiet experience had taught him that sudden movements could turn a simple moment into something complicated very quickly. The warm breeze carried the sweet smell of waffle cones across the small parking lot, and somewhere behind them a car stereo hummed softly with a country song that felt strangely out of place against the tension forming in the air. Lily stood close to him now, her small shoulder pressing lightly against his hip as if she could sense the shift even if she did not fully understand it. The officer took a few slow steps forward, boots tapping against the pavement in a steady rhythm, his eyes still fixed on Marcus with a look that was more calculation than curiosity. The red light on the body camera blinked again. Recording. Watching. Saving every second. "Sir, I asked you to step away from the child," the officer repeated, his voice controlled but louder now, enough for several nearby shoppers to hear clearly. Marcus glanced around. For a moment, noticing how quickly ordinary life had begun to pause. The woman with the stroller had stopped completely near the sidewalk. The teenagers by the pickup truck were no longer pretending not to watch. Even the employee inside the ice cream shop leaned slightly toward the window, curiosity written across his face. Marcus inhaled slowly, the kind of steady breath someone takes when they know the next few words matter more than usual. "Officer," he said carefully, "her name is Lily Reed. My name is Marcus Reed. I am her father." Lily nodded again, lifting the melting cone slightly, as if that simple action somehow confirmed the truth. Strawberry dripped down the side and landed on the pavement with a quiet pink splatter. "He is my dad," she said with the uncomplicated certainty only a child can carry. The officer's expression did not change. Instead, his gaze moved briefly toward Lily, studying her pale freckles, her light hair tied into a loose ponytail, the bright unicorn tag dangling from her backpack zipper. Then his eyes returned to Marcus, lingering there as if comparing two pictures that did not match inside his mind. A second police officer finally stepped out from the passenger side of the cruiser. Officer Emily Carter moved more slowly, closing the door behind her with a quieter sound and scanning the scene with a look that seemed less certain. Her eyes paused on Lily's backpack, then on the ice cream melting across the asphalt, and finally on the small emergency bracelet around the girl's wrist that reflected a sliver of sunlight. Marcus noticed that glance. He also noticed the way the crowd had grown just a little larger, the invisible circle of attention widening by a few feet. People were not speaking, but their presence had weight. Lily tugged gently on Marcus's sleeve again, her voice softer now. "Dad, did we do something wrong?" Marcus lowered his eyes toward her, forcing a calm smile even though the situation felt stranger with every passing second. "No, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Everything is fine." But the officer in front of them was already reaching toward the radio clipped near his shoulder, his posture tightening, as if preparing for something official. The blinking body camera kept recording, capturing the summer heat, the silent onlookers, the nervous question in a child's voice, and the growing sense that this ordinary afternoon was about to turn into something far more serious than anyone in that parking lot had expected. Officer Daniel Hargrove lifted the radio closer to his shoulder, his thumb pressing the button with a soft click that seemed louder than it should have been in the quiet parking lot. "Dispatch, this is Unit 34. He said in a measured voice that carried across the warm afternoon air. "I have a situation involving a possible child safety concern. Requesting verification." The words hung there, drifting through the silence like something heavier than sound. Marcus Reed felt Lily's small hand slip into his fingers, sticky from the melting strawberry ice cream she had almost forgotten about. The cone tilted sideways, a slow ribbon of pink sliding down toward the pavement. Marcus gently took the cone from her before it fell completely, setting it on the nearby trash lid as carefully as if it were fragile glass. He did not rush. He did not argue. He simply moved with quiet patience, the kind that comes from years of learning how quickly a misunderstanding can grow if emotion takes control. Lily looked up at him with wide eyes that reflected both confusion and trust. "Dad, why are they calling on the radio?" she asked softly. Marcus crouched slightly so he could meet her gaze at eye level, his voice calm even though the tight feeling in his chest had begun to settle deeper. "Sometimes officers just want to check things, sweetheart," he said. "It is their job to make sure everyone is safe." The explanation sounded simple, but the weight behind the officer's words still lingered in the air. Around them the small audience had grown without anyone fully realizing it. A man in a delivery uniform leaned against the side of his van, pretending to scroll through his phone while watching the scene from the corner of his eye. The woman with the stroller slowly rocked the wheels back and forth as if motion might make the moment less uncomfortable. Even the teenagers near the pickup truck had slipped their phones into their hands, curiosity now stronger than their earlier hesitation. The red body camera light blinked again on Officer Hargrove's chest. Blink. Record. Blink. Record. Officer Emily Carter stood a few steps behind him, her attention shifting carefully between Marcus and Lily. Her gaze paused on the small bracelet around Lily's wrist again. The bracelet was simple plastic, the kind schools often used for field trips or emergency contact information. Sunlight reflected off its smooth surface as Lily moved her hand slightly. Carter's brow tightened just a little, a detail almost invisible to anyone not looking closely. Meanwhile, Hargrove continued speaking into the radio, his tone firm and official. "The adult male claims to be the child's father. I am requesting confirmation of guardianship and identification check." The phrasing made several people in the parking lot exchange quiet glances. Marcus heard every word, but he did not interrupt. Instead, he slowly reached into the back pocket of his jeans, moving deliberately so there would be no misunderstanding about what he was doing. He pulled out his wallet and held it up where both officers could clearly see it before opening it. Inside were the ordinary things most parents carried without thinking. A driver's license. A faded photo tucked beside the credit cards. The photo showed Marcus sitting on a park bench with Lily on his shoulders, both of them laughing under a bright blue sky. My identification is right here, Marcus said calmly. Lily squeezed his hand again, looking from her father to the officers with growing worry. He picks me up from school every day, she added quickly, as if sharing that detail might somehow solve everything. Officer Carter glanced at the photo in the wallet from where she stood. The image, the bracelet, the identical last name Marcus had spoken earlier, all seemed to align quietly like pieces of a puzzle. But Officer Hargrove remained focused on the radio in his hand, waiting for the voice from dispatch that would either confirm the truth Marcus had already spoken or push this strange moment even further down a path no one in that sunlit parking lot had expected just 15 minutes earlier. The radio on Officer Daniel Hargrove's shoulder crackled with a burst of static, the sharp sound cutting through the thick summer air like a sudden spark. Everyone in the parking lot seemed to lean forward just a little without moving their feet. Marcus Reed remained standing calmly beside Lily, his wallet still open in his hand, the small photograph visible between his fingers. Lily watched the officer with the serious attention children sometimes show when they realize the adults around them are no longer in control of. A simple situation. The voice from dispatch had not answered yet, and the silence that followed felt longer than it actually was. Somewhere behind them a car engine started and then quickly shut off again, as if the driver did not want to disturb whatever was unfolding. Officer Emily Carter shifted her weight slightly, her eyes moving again toward Lily's wrist. The plastic bracelet caught the sunlight once more, the tiny printed letters reflecting like silver. Carter stepped half a pace closer, not interfering but observing with more focus now. Sir, Hargrove said, lowering the radio slightly but keeping his posture firm. I need you to understand that we received a call about a possible situation involving a child. Until we confirm everything, I need you to remain right where you are. Marcus nodded slowly, his expression steady even though the words carried a quiet accusation. I understand, he replied in a calm voice. But everything you need to confirm is already right here. He tilted the open wallet slightly so the photograph inside could be seen more clearly. The picture showed Lily perched on his shoulders at a park, sunlight shining through tall oak trees behind them. Lily looked at the photo and smiled faintly. That was the zoo day, she said, almost proudly. Dad let me feed the giraffes even though the giraffe sneezed on him. A small ripple of quiet laughter moved through the onlookers, the tension easing for just a fraction of a second. Officer Carter glanced at the photo again, then at Lily, then back at Marcus. Something about the pieces was beginning to align in her mind. But Hargrove remained focused on procedure. His attention returned to Lily's backpack now, the bright yellow fabric standing out sharply against Marcus's dark shirt. What school do you attend? He asked the girl. Lily straightened slightly, eager to answer the way children often are when adults ask them questions. Oak Valley Elementary, she said quickly. My teacher is Mrs. Hernandez and today we had math homework. But Dad said ice cream first because it is Saturday. The words came out in a cheerful rush, completely unaware of the seriousness surrounding them. Carter's eyes flickered again toward the bracelet. From where she stood, she could now read part of the printed information on its surface. Lily Reed. Emergency contact Marcus Reed. The same last name Marcus had spoken. Earlier echoed quietly in Carter's thoughts. Meanwhile, the blinking body camera continued capturing every second. The software of its electronics was almost impossible to hear, but the red light remained steady, marking the moment as something permanent. A few feet away, one of the teenagers lifted his phone slightly higher, recording from a different angle. The parking lot, once ordinary and forgettable, had become a stage where small details were beginning to matter. Marcus noticed Carter studying the bracelet. He gently lifted Lily's hand so the plastic band could be seen more clearly in the sunlight. Her school requires these for field trips, he said calmly. Her name is on it. My name is listed as her emergency contact. Carter leaned slightly closer, reading the small printed letters. For the first time since stepping out of the cruiser, Uncertainty crossed her face. But before she could speak, the radio on Hargrove's shoulder suddenly crackled again, louder this time, and the voice from dispatch finally began to answer. The radio burst fully to life. A sharp wave of static followed by the calm voice of the dispatcher echoing from Officer Daniel Hargrove's shoulder. Unit 34, dispatch responding. Stand by for verification. The words instantly pulled every pair of eyes in the parking lot toward the small black device clipped to Hargrove's uniform. Marcus Reed felt Lily's hand tighten around his fingers again, her small grip sticky from melted strawberry, but firm with quiet trust. The summer heat had begun to settle heavier across the asphalt, and the faint scent of sugar from the ice cream stand drifted through the still air. Marcus kept his posture relaxed, though inside, he could feel the slow pressure building in his chest. He had learned long ago that patience was sometimes the strongest response a person could offer. Lily looked up at him again, her voice softer now. "Dad, are we in trouble?" Marcus shook his head gently, giving her a reassuring smile that did not quite reach the worry in his eyes. "No, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Everything is going to be okay." The dispatcher's voice returned through the radio, this time clearer. Confirming driver's license for Marcus Allen Reed. Address matches Oak Valley District. No outstanding issues. Several people in the crowd shifted slightly, the tension easing just enough to create a ripple of murmured whispers. Officer Emily Carter glanced again at the bracelet on Lily's wrist, then toward Marcus's open wallet, and finally toward the radio, as if the pieces were now falling into a picture that had been incomplete only moments earlier. But Hargrove did not relax. Instead, he continued speaking into the radio with controlled determination. "Dispatch, I also need confirmation regarding guardianship of a minor identified as Lily Reed." Lily blinked when she heard her own name spoken over the radio. "That is me," she said quietly, almost as if the device itself could hear her. Marcus gently squeezed her hand, silently reminding her that they were simply waiting. Around them the parking lot had grown even more attentive. The delivery driver had stopped pretending to check his phone. The woman with the stroller now stood still, rocking the stroller slightly out of habit while watching carefully. The teenagers near the pickup truck had fully raised their phones, recording every moment without trying to hide it anymore. The blinking red body camera on Hargrove's chest continued its steady rhythm. Blink. Record. Blink. Record. Officer Carter stepped one small pace closer to Marcus and Lily, her tone quieter when she spoke. "Sir, how old is your daughter?" Marcus answered immediately. "She is 8 years old." Lily nodded enthusiastically. "I turned 8 in April. Dad made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." Carter gave a faint smile at the detail, but her attention quickly returned to the radio as the dispatcher's voice crackled once more. Unit 34, school records confirm emergency contact listing for Lily Reed. Primary guardian listed as Marcus Allen Reed. The confirmation hung in the warm air like the final piece of a long puzzle. Several people in the crowd exchanged glances that carried a different tone now. But instead of the moment ending, an uncomfortable silence followed. Marcus slowly closed his wallet, the small photograph slipping back between the cards. Lily looked between the two officers, her brows slightly furrowed in confusion. She did not fully understand what had just happened, only that something about the grown-up's behavior still felt unfinished. And as the red light of the body camera continued blinking steadily on Officer Hargrove's chest, the entire parking lot waited to see what he would do next. For several long seconds after the dispatcher finished speaking, no one moved. The confirmation hung in the air like the final note of a song that had not quite faded yet. Marcus Reed stood quietly beside his daughter, the summer sunlight reflecting off the windshield of the police cruiser behind the officers. Lily looked from one adult face to another, her small eyebrows knitted together as she tried to understand why everyone was suddenly so silent. The melted strawberry ice cream still rested on the metal trash lid where Marcus had set it earlier, now slowly collapsing into a pink puddle under the heat of the afternoon sun. Marcus kept his hands relaxed at his sides, his posture calm, but inside he felt the same steady pressure that had been building since the first command had been spoken minutes earlier. Across from him, Officer Daniel Hargrove remained still, the radio now quiet against his shoulder. The blinking red light of the body camera continued its steady rhythm against his uniform, recording the moment that now felt heavier than before. Around them, the small crowd had grown even more attentive. The delivery driver no longer pretended to check his phone. The teenagers leaned forward slightly against the hood of their truck, their cameras still raised. Even the woman with the stroller had stopped rocking the wheels. The parking lot had become completely still, as if the entire place was waiting for a single decision. Officer Emily Carter shifted her weight again, her eyes moving from the bracelet on Lily's wrist to the calm expression on Marcus's face. The information from dispatch had been clear. The names matched. The school records confirmed the connection. Every small detail that had seemed uncertain before now aligned in a simple and obvious way. Carter cleared her throat gently and spoke in a quiet tone that only the people closest could hear. The confirmation is clear. Her voice carried no accusation, only a calm statement of fact. Lily looked up at Marcus again. "Does that mean we can go home now?" she asked softly. Marcus gave her another reassuring smile, though his eyes briefly flickered toward the officer standing in front of them. "We will see, sweetheart," he answered gently. Hargrove finally shifted his stance, his boots scraping lightly against the pavement as he adjusted the radio on his shoulder. For the first time since arriving, the confident firmness in his posture seemed slightly less certain. His eyes moved once more between Marcus and Lily, then toward the people watching from across. The parking lot. Phones were still raised. The red body camera light was still blinking. Everything that had happened in the past several minutes had been captured from multiple angles. Marcus noticed that moment of hesitation. He did not raise his voice or step forward. Instead, he simply stood there with quiet dignity, one hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. The warmth of the afternoon sun wrapped around them both, and the smell of sugar from the nearby ice cream stand drifted through the air again. It was the same ordinary Saturday setting that had existed before the cruiser arrived, yet something about it felt permanently changed. Lily glanced down at the melting ice cream again and sighed softly. "Dad, my cone is gone now," she murmured. Marcus followed her gaze and smiled faintly. "That is okay," he said. "We can always get another one." The words were simple, but the calm way he spoke them carried a quiet strength that several people in the crowd seemed to notice. The moment stretched on, balanced between what had already been confirmed and what still had not been said aloud. And as the red light of the body camera continued blinking steadily against the officer's chest, the entire parking lot waited to see whether the next words would finally bring the strange afternoon to its end or turn it into something that would be remembered far beyond this small strip mall. Officer Daniel Hargrove finally shifted his stance, the quiet scrape of his boot against the pavement sounding louder now that the dispatcher's confirmation had settled over the entire parking lot. For a moment he said nothing. His eyes moved slowly across the scene as if seeing it differently for the first time. The phones held by the teenagers were still pointed in his direction. The delivery driver's camera lens glinted under the afternoon sun. Even the woman with the stroller had not looked away, and the small red light on the body camera attached to his chest continued blinking steadily, capturing every expression, every hesitation, every second of silence. Marcus Reed did not speak. He simply stood beside his daughter, calm and patient, one hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. The gesture was not dramatic, but it carried the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly who he was and did not need to prove it through raised voices or sudden movements. Lily leaned gently against his side now, her earlier excitement about ice cream replaced with a child's growing awareness that something unusual had just happened. "Dad?" she whispered softly, glancing down at the pink puddle that had once been her cone. "Can we really get another one later?" Marcus looked down at her and smiled with gentle reassurance. "Of course we can," he said. "There is always time for another cone." The simple answer carried across the quiet space between the adults, and several people in the crowd exchanged subtle glances. Officer Emily Carter took a slow breath and stepped forward half a pace, her attention now firmly on her partner. "The records match," she said calmly. Dispatch confirmed it. Her tone was steady, not confrontational, but clear enough that everyone nearby could hear. Hargrove's jaw tightened slightly as the words settled in. For the first time since arriving, he looked directly at Marcus rather than through him. The confident certainty that had filled his voice earlier was no longer there. Instead, there was something closer to realization. He glanced briefly toward Lily, who watched him with open curiosity, her small fingers still gripping the edge of Marcus's shirt. The officer's radio remained quiet now. There was no new instruction coming from dispatch, no additional question left unanswered. The situation that had once seemed suspicious had become something very different under the light of simple facts. A faint breeze drifted through the parking lot, rustling the paper napkins stacked on the ice cream counter and carrying the smell of sugar and waffle cones across the asphalt. Marcus noticed the officer's hesitation but did not step forward or demand an explanation. His calm presence seemed to fill the space where tension had been only minutes earlier. The blinking red light on the body camera continued recording, capturing the subtle shift happening in real time. Around them the crowd remained silent, but the atmosphere had changed. What had started as curiosity had slowly transformed into quiet awareness. Phones remained raised, not out of excitement now, but out of recognition that the moment unfolding in front of them mattered. Hargrove finally cleared his throat, his posture no longer rigid. His gaze flickered once more toward the cameras, then back to Marcus and Lily. For the first time since stepping out of the cruiser, he seemed to understand that the situation had moved. Beyond a simple parking lot interaction, the evidence had been recorded. The confirmation had been spoken, and the small blinking camera on his chest had quietly preserved every second of the afternoon that had just changed direction in a way no one there would easily forget. Officer Daniel Hargrove inhaled slowly before speaking, the sound almost lost beneath the faint hum of traffic from the street beyond the strip mall. For several seconds, he studied Marcus Reed, as if searching for something that should have been obvious from the beginning. The blinking red light of the body camera continued its steady rhythm against his uniform, capturing the shift in the moment as clearly as it had captured the tension earlier. Around them the small crowd remained still, the quiet attention of strangers now filling the parking lot like a silent audience. Marcus did not move. His hand remained resting lightly on Lily's shoulder, steady and protective without being possessive. Lily looked between the two officers again, her expression curious rather than afraid, though the confusion had not left her eyes. The afternoon sun reflected off the windows of the nearby stores, casting long bright streaks across the pavement. Finally Hargrove spoke, his voice no longer carrying the sharp command it had held earlier. "Mr. Reed," he said slowly, the words deliberate. Dispatch confirmed the information. The statement sounded formal, almost rehearsed, but the meaning was clear enough for everyone listening. Marcus nodded once in acknowledgement. He did not interrupt. He did not demand anything further. The calm way he responded seemed to make the quiet around them even deeper. Officer Emily Carter stepped slightly to the side, allowing a clearer line of space between Marcus and her partner. Her eyes briefly scanned the crowd, noticing the raised phones and the steady blinking of the body camera. The afternoon had become something that would likely travel far beyond this small parking lot. Lily tugged gently on Marcus's sleeve again, her voice soft but hopeful. "Does that mean everything is okay now?" she asked. Marcus looked down at her with the same steady warmth he had shown since the beginning. "Yes, sweetheart," he answered gently. "Everything is okay." Hargrove's shoulders shifted slightly, as if he were adjusting the weight of the moment settling around him. The realization was visible now, not only to Marcus but to the people watching from the edges of the scene. The situation that had begun with suspicion had been undone by simple facts, quiet patience, and a few small details that had always been there to see. Carter spoke again, her tone measured but firm. "The confirmation is clear," she repeated, ensuring there was no uncertainty left in the air. Hargrove glanced once more toward the body camera attached to his chest, the red light still blinking steadily. Every word, every hesitation, every expression had been preserved. The officer's gaze returned to Marcus and Lily, and for a brief second, he seemed to weigh what should come next. Marcus remained composed, his posture relaxed, his presence calm despite everything that had unfolded. Lily looked down again at the melted remains of her ice cream and sighed quietly. "Dad, next time I will eat it faster," she said with the innocent practicality of a child. A few soft chuckles moved through the crowd at the simple remark. Marcus smiled faintly. "We will just get a fresh one," he replied. The moment carried a quiet dignity that did not need raised voices or dramatic gestures. Under the bright afternoon sun, with strangers watching and cameras still recording, the truth had already spoken for itself. and the small blinking camera on the officer's chest had captured every second of how that truth slowly revealed itself. The moment slowly began to dissolve back into the ordinary rhythm of the afternoon. Officer Daniel Hargrove lowered his radio completely now, the tension that had once filled his posture fading under the weight of the confirmation that everyone had already heard. The red light on his body camera continued blinking steadily, recording the quiet aftermath just as faithfully as it had captured the earlier suspicion. Marcus Reed remained calm, his hand still resting gently on Lily's shoulder, as if the entire moment had simply been an interruption in their Saturday routine rather than something heavier. Around them the crowd began to shift again, people slowly remembering the errands they had paused and the conversations they had left unfinished. The delivery driver stepped back toward his van. The woman with the stroller gave Marcus a small nod before turning toward the sidewalk. Even the teenagers near the pickup truck lowered their phones slightly, whispering to one another about what they had just witnessed. Lily looked up at Marcus with a hopeful expression that felt wonderfully normal after everything that had happened. "Dad," she said softly, "can we try the mint chocolate chip this time?" Marcus glanced down at her and smiled with quiet warmth, the kind of smile that carried both patience and pride. "If that is what you want, we will try mint chocolate chip," he replied. The simple answer seemed to lift the last traces of tension from the moment. Officer Emily Carter stepped back toward the cruiser, her eyes briefly meeting Marcus's in a look that carried quiet understanding. She did not say much, but the small nod she offered felt sincere. Hargrove remained still for another second, the realization of how the situation had unfolded settling across his expression. The bright afternoon sun reflected off the cruiser's windshield, casting long lines of light across the asphalt, as if marking the place where the misunderstanding had finally ended. Marcus gently guided Lily toward the ice cream stand again, the same place where they had been standing only minutes earlier before everything had changed. The metal counter still held the stack of napkins and the colorful menu board listing dozens of flavors. The employee inside the shop watched them approach and offered a quiet smile, clearly aware that the afternoon had carried more weight than anyone had expected. Lily leaned forward to look through the glass display, her earlier excitement returning piece by piece as she studied the rows of ice cream tubs. "Dad, look," she said with renewed enthusiasm, pointing at a bright green scoop behind the glass. "That one." Marcus laughed softly under his breath, the sound warm and steady. "Mint chocolate chip it is," he said. Behind them, the police cruiser door closed with a gentle click as the officers returned to their vehicle. The parking lot gradually resumed its normal movement, engines starting, shopping carts rattling, conversations continuing as if the strange moment had been only a brief pause in the flow of the day. But the small red body camera had captured everything, every word and every second, preserving the quiet dignity with which a father had simply stood beside his daughter while the truth revealed itself. And as Marcus handed Lily a brand new cone that shimmered pale green under the afternoon sun, the ordinary joy on her face became the final reminder that sometimes the most powerful response in a difficult moment is calm patience and the simple certainty of who you are.